looking at the post GenAI world, and that meant building systems that inherently had AI at the heart of it. Your product has been used, say, 100 times. It delivers a certain performance versus 1,000 times because it's using that data, it's using that memory to give you better custom outcomes, business logic, right? That I think is going to become absolutely...
Startup stories look exciting from the outside, but the real learning happens when you hear what it actually takes to build, lead, and scale in the real world. That's exactly what Coding Ninja 10x Club members experienced in an exclusive fireside chat with Nikkitha Shanker, co-founder and CEO at SuperBryn, a company building reliability infrastructure for enterprise voice agents. And as she shared her journey of building in deep tech, making high-stake decisions, and turning bold ideas into real-world outcomes. Now it's your turn to catch the real insights, founder mindset, and industry perspective that only Coding Ninja 10x Club members get access to.
Okay, so let's first start with your journey, and because that tells us the story that how did you reach here. So what was the moment that you felt that AI was just not an enabler but the core of what you wanted to build at SuperBryn?
So I would say that there is some amount of benefit that I had because we sort of started iterating and building once we were post the Gen AI, the tectonic shift happened, right? So I was building in my earlier stint, which was a cross-border logistics tech company. Again, a pre-Gen AI product. So once the Gen AI and the tectonic shift happened, the thought was more around how can we either use AI in whatever we've already been building, or how can we look at this new AI world from scratch, right? So we iterated multiple times to see if there were layers that we could add to the existing business, but somehow it felt very force-fitting, right? And that's how I happened to meet my now co-founder, Neetu, who's a voice AI scientist. She has done a PhD from IIT Madras and postdoc from King's College London, all specifically in voice AI. So then, so the interest and the thoughts were around what is the voice agent ecosystem like? How is that evolving? And we found very interesting signals to say that this is sort of at an inflection point because as a modality, it's something that humans have always loved to speak and interact. And India, especially being extremely voice heavy, even while, sending WhatsApp voice notes and so on and so forth, right? So there were very interesting signals from that industry that was coming in, and there was strong expertise at Neethu's end from a tech perspective. I had real interest building businesses. So it's all sort of converged and we started out in that industry. So to answer your question, I think we were slightly at advantage because we sort of started looking at the post Gen AI world, and that meant building systems that inherently had AI at the heart of it rather than sort of sprinkle and spray kind of approach to things. But having said that, also one layer is we could still pick up a problem and then say that, can we add a touch of AI to it? Can we make this an AI assistant or do all that? While that was one path that we could pursue, I think we fundamentally looked at the voice agent ecosystem and said that there is a deeper problem that has to be attacked from a foundational perspective, and said that yes, being AI native becomes a critical part of the outcome that we are looking at, and that's how we sort of started building this. Yeah.
Great. And I also think that about your journey, it's like you have that planning and you understood the gap. And I think it's a very important point for all our audience, that understanding the problem, as we say, that is the most important thing before you even build, that you need to understand the problem and what you're going to build. So the first point for your audience for today is always, have that knack to understand what's the problem there and how can you solve it. So AI has been like an hype for everyone. So everywhere we are listening, we are just talking AI is this, AI is that. Come so many buzzwords. But as a founder, has your AI, the perspective or the understanding of AI evolved from experimentation to building scalable and real world products?
See, honestly, I would say that most of us building in the AI space are still yet to figure massive PMF, right? Or product market fit. Everybody is still trying to navigate in this ecosystem. So to answer by saying that we have scaled would be sort of an exaggeration. We are still figuring out a lot of things. Having said that, I think how things might look differently is that we are looking at, can we solve very specific KPIs for the customers that we are closely working with. We are not today trying to solve a large scale problem, so to say, which means if I have, say, 10 customers who are closely working with, I want to see which all needles can I move for them, right? And to move those needles, what is the depth and reliability that I can build in the product? That's my only thought process at this point in time. So it's not about, how can I scale it to a 10,000 users at this point of time? How can I do that fast enough? How can I solve for concurrency? How can I solve for onboarding? All these are problems that I think can only emerge once you have solved for very specific KPI problems for the customers that you're working with, right? So earlier stages, especially as AI companies, we are all trying to still figure out how can we use AI to solve people's problem, right? Which means building engineering is sort of like a solved problem. So which means if you are able to really move needles of KPI for your customers, then moving it to a engineering scale problem is a very simple thing that you can do. For instance, say today, most of your systems probably fundamentally rely on certain LLMs, right? Which is a probabilistic model, which means every time the outcome that it generates is going to be slightly different. So then how do you ensure reliability in the outcome that you're building, for your customers, right? Once you've solved for that, then okay, how can I scale it across 10,000 users, which is sort of like an engineering problem, which we are all very familiar with. So I would say the earlier part is focusing less on UI UX or the beauty of the product, how simplified can the onboarding be, all that are like noise that you can sort of shut out initially. Focus on like really good 5-10 customers, and at the end of whatever you're working with them, can you move certain needles for them, and is that measurable? In our case, for example, voice agent was at performance level X when we started working. Were we able to take it to Y? And was this measurable? At what time? How much time did this take? And what was the cost of doing this, right? So that will help businesses decide whether they need this product or not. So why I'm saying this is because there's so much noise with so many products in the market. How do businesses really take the call of, do we want to use your product or not? So however seamless your onboarding journey is, however beautiful your product does, the end of the day, if it's not able to move these KPI, and if it doesn't have the depth to do that, it would be tricky, is the thought process.
Right. And you in the first answers you mentioned about the gaps where SuperBryn came, and also you mentioned like right now voice agents was in X and how to move it to Y. So what were the gaps in market or consumer behavior that convinced you that there was a strong opportunity in an AI-led company like SuperBryn or the voice AI space?
Yeah, so there also I think we had a very iterative kind of a process in place. So I'm a hardcore believer in doing everything in iterations. We never have a fully built out Taj Mahal ever that is fitting for the customer. So it's a brick by brick, solving problem, right? And so what we did initially was on day one, when let's say even before God created Earth or the day zero, right? All we have is the information that Neetu has certain expertise in voice AI. I like building business, building products. So then with this, we went into the market saying that can we build out voice agents? That was day one, right? From there, we got certain insights and then we iterated and went a little up to say that can we specialize and build this only for healthcare, because we were able to see that the gap was it's very complex, it's very the needs are much higher, the impact could be higher. So we went into healthcare. Once we started building this what do you call the voice agents for healthcare specifically, is where we realized that interestingly, to showcase a demo and to put out a voice agent in as a demo hardly takes you any time, especially with companies like LifeKit or Wapi or Ritel, all of them coming into the ecosystem. The launch has become significantly democratized and it's super easy to do that. But what happened was that the moment we put this in, so the demo went really great. It was with one of the largest hospital chains here in Bangalore, and demo went great. We were trying to deploy it in production, and 100 things were breaking, and these were moving parts as well. So when you're trying to fix for latency, the efficacy goes for a toss. When you're fixing the efficacy, latency goes for a toss, or it breaks some guardrails, or it starts speaking midway, some hallucinations happen, right? And these are all moving parts which we were really not able to control and say that how do we make this agent work effectively in production. It was sort of embarrassing to actually deploy something like that in production. And we said that, no, we can't do it. Like, we'll have to stop this, right? And then that led us to pause for a moment and say that, is that an insight that we are having? There are enough tools to help you launch, but somehow production is breaking miserably, despite the understanding that we thought we had in this voice AI. How come we are failing? And if we are failing, how are others going to be able to deploy this in production? So it was a very iterative, step-by-step insight that we had. And at that point of time, when we took a pause, then we decided to start talking to as many founders building in the voice agent space. We spoke to a lot of them building in recruitment, finance, health tech as well. All of them said the same thing. Last year was a year of demos, so we were okay. But when we are now going into production, either we are forced to have a large engineering team who will sit and listen to each of these calls and then see where things are breaking and trying to fix that, or we have to shut down the project altogether because we're just not able to keep up with this burgeoning cost. And not just the cost, the fact that we need to have very specialized folks to fine-tune this agent to make it work in production. So from the insight that we personally faced, then we try to extrapolate it to see, is this something that was common across a larger segment of audience? We spoke to at least close to, say, 100 folks, got very interesting insights from there. That's when we then iteratively jump to a point where there is a missing reliability layer for voice agents. And can we look at that, considering that's a very open, wide space today with not many people trying to solve for it? So that's how we reached where we are and what we are building today.
And I think this is a very great way that you mentioned, how to also analyze the problem, that you started in a very iterative way. You went step by step, doing one thing, you got the insight for another problem, which was a bigger problem and everyone was facing. And I think this is a very amazing way our learners could also follow. I think
when you're in that space trying to solve for something, right? It's the conviction also keeps increasing in that problem that you're trying to solve, because the other option is you can be outside the problem, and then you can keep visualizing somebody is having this problem and keep trying to solve for it, right, and try to reach a optimum product at some point of time, and then say we'll go to closer to the market, right? But what I have personally felt is that the more we are inside the problem, closer to the customer, whatever crappy product you have on day one also, the insights build convictions, and that helps you build something stronger and better that market needs. So that's the general thought.
And it's a great thought, to be very honest. And before I move on to the next question, Sally says that the voice is breaking. So if you could please confirm others that is it so, or is it only for Shalish? Just a quick yes, no in the chat box, please. If it's go, works fine, voice. Okay, cool. So Shalish, maybe you need to just refresh or just disconnect and reconnect back. I think that would help you. Okay, so let's move to the another interesting part of the fireside chat, and mostly which our audience are always more interested in. That's the evolving AI landscape and the opportunities related to this evolution. So now we have moved from AI being a feature that was earlier to being the product itself. Yeah. So what major shifts do you see in how companies are adopting AI in today's time?
Major shift in how companies are adopting AI, right? I think, see, the current thought process or the bottleneck for most companies is, from a usage perspective, is the trust, right? Can I really, put this conversational bot in production, or can I really put this agent to work in large scale use cases? Will it work? So on and so forth, right? So while everybody understands that the initial adoption is so mandatory, everybody will have to, and even large corporates have a fairly big digital adoption teams, right? The tricky or the challenging part is going to be how to scale in production, which means there will be more workforce that will come into ecosystems that can handle the evaluation of these agentic systems, iterations of these agentic system, improving the, say, accuracy from, say, the 95% that we are seeing to that 100%, which is the trickiest bit, right? That last 5%. So I think from a company perspective, there is still a trust deficit. From a workforce perspective, there will be more people who will have to build skills around evaluating and understanding how to test these probabilistic systems. So before, say, you had very deterministic processes, systems, workflows, versus how this is going to be varied probabilistic outcomes. So at every role, as a PM, how do you measure that? As an engineer, how do you address that? So these are all shifts that will be happening, is my general thought. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's going to be a very great shift in the mindset also for people, including along with the skills that they have.
Right.
So, and you're talking about these skills and AI events. So I just want to know from you. So according to you, currently, which is the most overhyped thing in AI, and what is the most underrated but massively impactful thing in AI today?
Overhyped, I mean, in hindsight, I think we'll be able to say a lot of things are overhyped. But so today, if we have to, if we are trying to solve for very narrow, use cases which are essentially wrappers on top of your LLMs. Those are all use cases that could be, superbly overhyped, right? These are very niche, super specific, areas, including coding as an ecosystem. I think bunch of tools coming out with very specific use cases. We'll have to wait and see how those are going to evolve. As an industry, I think coding is becoming extremely overhyped because there are inflow of products, many of them solving for good end-to-end use cases, many of them not doing. What is underrated, I still think, is reliability. Right. So anything related to reliability. And I think there are 2-3 aspects to it. One is, of course, evals. Second is going to be, context engineering, right? Which is how do you ensure there is enough context of the business ingrained into the agentic systems, and how do you leverage that to build better outcomes? So I think context engineering, RAG, caching, all that is still very, very underrated and it's evolving, which is great. Then memory. The other is the importance of creating memory layers and using that as a compounding factor to bring, again, outcomes. These are things which I think are still underrated, or things that have still not yet picked up. But it's only a matter of time. I mean, this is an evolution process. So there was no way we could have done this in a reverse order. So obviously it had to come in a certain order, and this might be the right time for things like that to happen.
And it's great to really know these all things from you, because a lot of us are not even aware, because we are trying to go through this AI landscape, but we're not actually aware what are those underrated things which could be a massively impactful thing in the coming time. And I think CXO cafes are meant for that purpose, get that understanding from all of you who are paving that landscape. And I think that this insight will surely help a lot of learners if they want to dive into this AI landscape. So as we have also seen, even we are also taking sessions on like Hugging Face, and we are seeing that a lot of models are out there, like open source models, which you can directly use. So when these fundamental models are so commoditized that everyone can use it, how can startup founders of today, think differently and become an AI differentiator when thousands of models are out there and everyone can do that thing? How do you be the differentiator here?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I'm not sure if I'm repeating a few things, but I think there is a lot of importance in that. And that's why I want to say it again and again. So one is, again, I'm tying back to reliability, right? When I say reliability, most of your models are probabilistic, and it can give you, say, 90 to 95% of 80 to 95% of outcome. Now, there are benefits of having probabilistic models, right? Which is the creative thinking that it can, how it can extrapolate a lot of things. But on the flip side, there is also hallucination, right? It can think beyond what you want it to think, right? So, which means the last 15 to 20% or 5 to 20%, depending on use case to use case, has to come from very deterministic workflows. So how do you build reliability? By balancing the probabilistic side and the creativity, not losing that, but at the same time bringing certain deterministic workflows and getting the best of both worlds is what will lead to, say, reliable outcomes, right? So that is going to be very, very important in whatever you are building, so that you don't lose the benefits of one over the other. Too much determinism can really spoil the model's thinking also. Too much hallucination can take you outside. So that striking that right balance, I think, is going to become important over and over again. Another thing, I think, a data flywheel, right? Which is data as a moat, or how can you bring in very proprietary data sets that can kind of improve the performance of whatever you're building overall, right? For example, an industry depth, if you are able to create, and you have larger data sets around that industry, and can that create a better performance? So we are talking about the last 15% of performance, right? Can you bring proprietary data sets which can improve the outcomes in terms of performance? And finally, like I said, the memory, right? So adding a memory layer, the user history keeps compounding, which means as a business, there's a lot of switching cost also eventually to move from the product that you're offering, because combination of the data flywheel plus the memory is going to give you an outcome which is going to get better with every interaction. Right. So let's say your product has been used, say, 100 times. It delivers a certain performance versus 1,000 times, because it's using that data, it's using that memory to give you better
Right.
custom outcomes. So it's only getting better with every usage. So now when you're moving from this product to another product, it has to again go through that entire learning, which is a high switching cost. So can you ingrain that into your product so that it becomes really hard for people to switch? So it's a combination of reliability, data, and memory is what I think. But nevertheless, faster distribution is definitely going to add value at the end of it all. There's no doubt about it. But I think from a product perspective, these three things could probably, yeah.
Great. So we have a lot of data analysts and full stack developers in our audience.
Yeah.
And we have got a lot of questions, the same question a lot of times, that how is or will AI take our jobs? That has been like answered a lot of times. But we would like to understand from you how the roles of data analyst and full stack developers or any other developers also are evolving and going beyond the traditional way that they had or the traditional application building. How are they moving ahead or evolving? And what core skills should people or all our data analysts and developers prioritize right now to stay relevant and not become obsolete when AI, becomes more and more evolved or powerful?
Yeah, so I mean, data analysts, again, I'm tying it back to you were working on deterministic systems. So it was very easy for you to measure the outcomes because you, for input A, this is the output that you're going to get, right? Here, you're going to have system which is a combination of probabilistic plus deterministic. So you as a person, I think, will have to navigate this evolved landscape, which means dealing more with evaluations, scenario generations, how to create those scenarios very specific to the agent path that you are, for the agent that you are creating, and how to evaluate whether the agent is performing under those scenarios. So creating a balance of scenarios which are useful for testing the agent and understanding how are they performing and using that insight to improve the performance of the agent, right? So this becomes while earlier data analysts were probably looking at a lot of generic data which did not change, which means if your inputs were constants, your outputs were always the same. So you will be able to extrapolate it and then, make judgments out of it. Here, I think that's going to be very varying, which means for the same inputs, you'll have to see what are the different outcomes that you're getting. How do you put a guardrail around it? So one is definitely on the evaluation, scenario generation, understanding how to look at the agent in the new scenario generation perspective becomes very important. Another would be having business logic, right? That I think is going to become absolutely mandatory because your tech skills are more or less sort of going to get either you will have to be super specialists in tech, or if you're a generalist, then you will need to add a lot of business logic understanding to it, because at the end of the day, this agent is going to be performing an end-to-end workflow. How do you build that workflow becomes very, very critical. So having a business logic also becomes important. Third is also a lot of emotional intelligence, right? Because these are, again, you're designing systems or building systems that are LLM driven. So how do you have the emotional intelligence to understand what consumers need? Is it behaving according to those requirements, and is it connecting to those pain points that the customers are requiring? So emotional intelligence and adding that layer to building and designing systems. Right now, the whole Grok thing is going for a toss. It's with the recent generation of certain kind of images, right? So there is one side that says that any tool at the hand of a human, they can misuse it, versus another side which is trying to say that can you build in systems itself which are more generic, so you don't have to face such situations altogether, right? So how can you think from that perspective? It's an extension of business logic, is to also be empathetic and then see how you can add those values, right? So data analyst is probably going to have a larger ambit of scope is my thought. Full stack developers, to me, I think is again, your traditional architecture is going to move to agentic systems, which is again a combination of determinism and probabilism, because there are workflows that you will have to adhere to, and you will have to use LLMs or SLMs or knowledge bases. So everything is getting extended, right? Like your orchestration layer, which was limited to say a few things, is getting stretched now. Your knowledge bases, which was probably just very structured databases, is going to become RAG systems with unstructured data in place. So that's a extension of your database. So everything in that sense is going to get extended, is what I think is going to happen.
And all data analysts and full stack developers, I think you should keep these points in mind, because this will help you to stand out, because a lot of people out there are not getting these insights, but you are getting the opportunity from the 10x Club and being a Coding Ninja learner. You're getting this, so please actually value these insights and always try to implement them in your work, because this will help you. And maybe someday it would be me or anyone from 10x Club interviewing you. So that would be an amazing thing for us also, and for you guys also. Okay, so I also got someone was asking also an example. So we have always got this understanding that data plays a very big role in the decision making of any companies. So can you share any, like we got an example the first when you talked about iteration, that how you got the next insight, but any other example where data played a very big role, the data insights, which really led to taking a big decision at SuperBryn, or any changes in the product, or a very interesting thing that happened when you have data in your hand, because it's a huge amount of data that you must be having. So any such example that you could just give us?
So I think it's so let's say in our case, right? So let's say what we are doing is essentially building evals and observability for voice agents, right? So evals is the first step. In evals, there is scenario generation, there is simulation, and then analyzing it, which means, let's say there is a voice agent created for a certain purpose. Let's take an example, a phone ordering voice agent, which means you're deploying it in Domino's. Customers keep calling, and then you as a voice agent will start taking orders and then relay that information to the CRM or whatever, and then the order gets placed, right? Now this agent has to be what do you call it? It has to work on multiple use cases, right? It has to diverse accents is one of the issues, say, or the person might have crazy background noises that's there on the call, the user who's talking to this agent, right? It's possible that multiple people are speaking in the background. It's possible that music is playing in the background. It's possible that somebody called and said that some out of menu thing, is it there? Somebody will ask, try to jailbreak, right? So these are all scenarios that we have to create, right? So our fundamental thesis, or players in this industry, what typically they do is that when they're working with a company, trying to build the scenarios for the agent to be tested against, they take the prompt as an input, and from the prompt create diverse scenario sets, right? Now, what we realized is that after working with a bunch of companies, for some reason, it's absolutely possible that the prompt that you have given the voice agent is a flawed prompt altogether. It might either be extremely bad, it could be overwritten, or it could be absolutely underwritten. Multiple things, right? So from that, the insight was that, so the data was like, we're able to create a lot of scenarios. But there is no, we were trying to question the scenarios in terms of how much coverage is it getting. And we realized that for the same industry, multiple customers, somehow the scenario generation becomes completely different. It's possible that company A gets 5 scenarios versus company B gets 1,000 scenarios versus company C gets, 100 scenarios, which means tying it back to prompt as an input, right, from these companies. What we felt was that the source of truth itself could be absolutely not that great. It's possible that somebody starts with a very poor prompt and then we are trying to generate scenarios. So that was an insight that we got from, from the data across different companies, which led us to say that, okay, if that's the case, if prompt is a part of the engine that needs to get better, we cannot use that as source of truth. Which means if there is an agent, that agent operates in an industry, in a domain. For example, financial services, banking, there is a lending agent, right? So there's a lot of generic industry level information that we might be able to beacon. And to support that, we add knowledge bases, prompts from the company, and then generate scenarios so that it becomes, you are not totally dependent on your flawed prompt to generate scenarios and test this agent, right? So that was an interesting insight that we had from the data and experimentation in general that we did.
Great, and really a great example, because I personally, when you said about prompt, and we have seen a lot of times, because a lot of your responses depend on the prompts. Some prompts may be bad, some may be good, some initial prompts, and it starts varying. And when you said that there is, taking the example lending, there is a lot of data back thing we have, because I think in today's time also all calls are most documented. People are noting it down, what was there, what were the situations. And I think that was a really great example. And okay, so let's understand one thing. So we have a confusion in our mind in today's time, a very big confusion. Even I personally have that confusion, that in today's time, professionals, or specifically if we talk about two segments, the early career professionals and the mid-career who are into 4 or 5 years plus of experience, should they choose joining, an AI startup versus a large tech company today? So that's a very big confusion we all have. And what would you say in this?
Oh, this is very interesting. I think today my breakfast was with one of the very young girl. She wanted, so I normally have breakfast times are reserved to be with somebody if they want some, if they have some questions or if I want to discuss something. Probably the exact same question on startup versus corporate versus should I take the risk, should I not, all these things, right? But I think it's a very personal choice and there is no right or wrong answers. I mean, it all depends on eventually a lot of factors, right? It depends on what stage of career, what you want from life, how much do you want to learn, so many things, right? So corporate, the thing is, there is definitely a large AI adoption push that is there. Even then, the problem is things are very slow and the level of ownership that you may get in being able to be part of those changes is going to be a little lower. It's going to be a very slow process change, and you might be limited to probably one small tiny leg of the kind of change. This is not different in the AI era. Even before, it was pretty much the same, right? In startups, obviously, the kind of exposure learning that you will have is extraordinary, but the chaos and the work is going to be very different. So it's absolutely important for you to kind of answer questions like, are you okay to put in those extra hours, especially on those initial days? Would you be interested in working in slightly higher pressure ecosystems, so on and so forth? But my hunch is that whoever are starting out early and very early parts of their stages of their career, they have luxury of time and they have all these they are okay to handle a little bit of pressure, okay to take a bit of risk. You have to realize that you are at the right place, right time, at a tectonic shift of what do you call it, technology, right? So ideal would be if you could leverage max, and the next 2 years of learning will determine how rest of your career is going to pan out to be. So any startups would be an amazing ground for learning and picking up those skills, probably 5x faster than how it would be if you join a corporate. Corporate could give you a good cushion and room for the next 2 years, but the next horizon becomes trickier. Startups will give you a very tricky 2 years, 3 years, but the horizon, I think the learning for that larger horizon would be much faster. But having said, there are flip sides to both, absolutely. So it's a very personal choice that way, and depending on the limitations that you have. Even from a compensation perspective, there are risks associated to, say, working with startups, right? So that was one of the questions that this girl who I was talking to had, like stability versus, early stage startup, what if it shuts down, and so on and so forth. But my point was very simple. What you can learn even in 6 months in a startup is going to serve you much longer, even if it shuts down in 6 months. Market will be, ready to pick you up immediately. So that's, if you're willing to take that risk, the fruits are really, really going to be good. Yeah.
So as you mentioned, startup would be the personal choice for you. So just then next, the question is giving an hint or that insight to all our audience, that what traits or mindsets do you value most when you're hiring for your AI driven teams, and especially beyond the technical skills?
So that's what. So to me, I think if you're working in a startup, fundamentally what you need is curiosity. Just to understand why something is not working, something is working. Oh, how is it that it's working even when it's not supposed to work? Or how can I solve that guy's problem? Can I solve it better? How is somebody else solving? So those typical traits of asking questions and being curious, I think to me is the fundamental number one thing that is required. Second is how well are you able to learn faster, right? Because all of us come from a very typical education system where things are given to us in a platter. So there is structured syllabus, structured, ways to learn that. So even when you're, let's say when you're at work, people are let me take courses which are paid courses, which are very structured, that will help me, learn things faster, right? So when all your life has been around taking very structured courses, how do you learn things when things are absolutely unstructured, right? So what is your capability to learn? What is your process to learn? So one of the questions that I typically probably not questions, things that I discuss with whoever we are trying to, sort of take into our early team is, what is your learning process? What was something that you recently learned? And then how did you learn? How much time did you take? What was the impact of that? Did you experiment that learning, right? So that to me, I think is fundamentally how autodidactic can you be in terms of, picking up stuff, especially coming from a very structured background. The other is obviously high agency. High agency is a very difficult thing to kind of determine. Can you deliver end-to-end things? Can you pick up stuff and then take ownership and then deliver it end-to-end? So typical traits that I look for is that, it's very hard to define high agency, but has this person done some personal projects in free time? Has he or she, visualized how to solve it might be absolute stupidity, but that's okay. Have you tried attempting doing something besides your regular work schedule by picking up some projects and then solutioning it? Are there alternate skills that you have developed? It could be across, music, dance, I don't know, politics, but are you able to pick up something else as well and then try to look at that independently? So these are ways in which, high agency is sort of determined. And obviously cultural fit is the final, but I am not talking about it. But these are, I think what is going to evolve, like I said, is what is going to become more important is business logic. So the lines are blurring, right? So for example, tech folks are getting into customer calls, product folks are building tech, right? So the lines are blurring, which means tech folks are having to understand business. Product guys have to it might even eventually reach a point where the lines are too blurred and then there's a lot of overlap in the, and there aren't very specific PM roles, and, there's a good chance that the tech guy itself is going to handle a PM. So a lot of companies like, say, 11 Labs have even scraped their product manager roles. They have only tech roles who are able to handle customer requirements as well as technical solutioning, right? So that I think it becomes very important to get closer to customer, understanding customer needs, empathizing with them. So if you're a hardcore tech person trying to say that I'll only code, I don't know how long that will be. There will still be definitely roles for that, but there might be much greater value if you're able to also understand the customer problems and then solutionize things against it. I think I covered a lot of things. I'm not sure if I was clear, but yeah.
I think I myself found it very insightful, because what you said, that in today's time, actually those lines are blurring, because we have seen in a lot of places, even when I am working at Coding, it's kind of the same thing happening. We have to see both the sides, because when I'm also taking these sessions, I need to know the technical side plus the business side, that okay, if the people will take it or not. So I think that is a very good.
Adding one more point to that is, I think, this is probably something that everybody understands, but prompting is going to become absolutely a mandatory skill. So even earlier, discussion that we had about data analysts and coders, right? So model whisperers, the key to these models are the prompt and the way you write that effectively, right? So the ability to prompt and iteratively kind of improve the performance of that is going to become a mandatory part of and you'd not believe this, it's very hard to find people with really good prompting skills today. So it's something that's going to obviously get covered in the next year or so. But it's how much ever we say that we are all using ChatGPT and so on and so forth, prompting as a skill for designing systems is still super hard to come by. So as a skill, if we are looking at it, I think that's something that data analysts, product people, non-tech folks will also have to pick up essentially, for sure, is what I think. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move to the last set of questions for today, and because you understood the scales opportunities, but we would also like to understand from you, how does the future look from here? So looking 5 to 10 years ahead, how do you see AI reshaping how we work, build products, and also create complete companies?
Wow, this is like, I don't know if anybody has right answers for all this. All of us can only, from a point of insight, say a few things. How is AI going to shape, right? I think, so today how system is designed is, there is what do you call it? So 2 layers, let's split it into 2 things, right? One is the application layer. The other is, say, the infra layer, right? Application is people building in healthcare or fintech or anything that's having direct customer application from a B2C standpoint, or so on, B2B as well. Infrastructure is more around say your DevOps or your reliability testing, all that, right? That these are two different. So in the application layer, where I think things are headed is, today most SaaS companies come here, they offer a CRM and humans sit behind that CRM, use it and then deliver, right? I think this whole CRM plus human is going to change and become AI agentic systems, right? So in the application layer, I think the folks who control end-to-end workflows, right, which is making that first sales call, then using the intent of the caller to input that into the system, making a follow-up call maybe 2 days later. This is all done by agentic systems, not humans, right? I'm talking about, so that somebody, it's going to move from a CRM plus a human to entirely going to be managed by, the workflow is going to be controlled by agentic systems, right? A series of agentic systems. So that's how I think the application layer is going to, and that becomes important as well. Today, AI systems are only able to control small parts. It's just assisting humans in, either simplifying a meeting or getting some insights and stuff like that. So even from a cost perspective, it becomes very heavy to just have humans plus those assistive AI technologies. This will change. So end-to-end workflows will be handled by agentic systems, and there will be a cost for owning the outcome, which is how many deals are closed, or how many positions are closed in a recruitment agent, or how many people are onboarded, right? It's not going to be like how many model usages did you take, and then what's the cost for that. It's going to be an outcome. On the infrastructure side, I think it's going to evolve as, again, can the product become an insurance agent? Can it insure your agents, which is from a reliability standpoint? For example, in our case, right? Today we are saying we are giving you a platform to evaluate, observe, right? But the onus is still on the person to look at this and then make sense out of it and then improve the performance. But eventually, can we move to saying that we will evaluate, we will observe, we will only take actions and then ensure that this is getting better, and take ownership of that reliability of the agent at scale, right? Which is essentially like insuring the agent. So I think these are the two-sided thoughts on how AI is going to probably reshape from a overall standpoint in the coming days. I mean, again, thoughts, a lot of things could change, yeah.
And I think we are moving towards maybe an amazing era going forward. I hope it's not the Terminator side or the Terminator movie side that actually happened, but we are moving towards that, because Sam Altman also right now mentioned that we are moving towards the end of time with AI. Let's see that. Let's hope that doesn't happen. So before we move to the quick rapid fire round, I have the last question for today. That will be like, if someone, like a lot of people who are building with AI are very overwhelmed with the pace of change because it's changing very rapidly.
Yeah.
So what would be your advice to them, that how should they be focused and also at the same time stand out in today's AI landscape?
I mean, I think first of all, you have to feel absolutely, excited that you're at the right place, right time, right? So it's possible that, you're older for this age or you're too young for this age. So the shift is just happening, which means you are going to be able to see that transition, right? So firstly, from a overall, approach and attitude perspective, be absolutely elated to be at this juncture. So that itself changes your, oh my God, what, how, and all that. You're at the right place, right time. Second is, there's a lot of noise and clutter in terms of everybody trying to, overdo and build things and stuff like that, right? So can you really solve for a customer pain points, listen to their issues, understand that from very first principles, use that to build something, measure that, then iteratively sort of incrementally improve upon it, right? These are principles that were there before also, continues to exist. Just stick on to those basic principles, and in that process you're going to absolutely learn what is required by a customer, and that is what I think is going to absolutely matter. What I think you should not do is, probably that's easier to define, right? What you should not do is probably don't build products that bet against the model getting better, which is today the LLM has a certain limitation. Let me solve for that, because the models are getting better by the day. So if your product is only going to solve a very temporary use case, then it becomes very challenging, because soon the next update, the model has just gotten better, and then it becomes very hard to, your product has just vanished. Another framework to also think of is that all these big tech companies like your OpenAI or Gemini, all of them, they are headed towards how can they build super AGI, right? So will your product be something that they would be interested, and can that create a delta in their path to become a super AGI? If not, then that's a good space to be in, because you're solving for a very niche complex workflow problem that probably an OpenAI would never get into. So these are broad frameworks that you can use so that you don't get stuck in building something that they are going to eat up tomorrow, right? So the rest is, all of us are thriving and learning. So just keep at it, be absolutely excited and positive about it is my thought.
So first of all, Nikkitha, it was really, this complete fireside chat was really insightful for me. And also we find it very genuine, because we are all, young people in this landscape who are all trying to pave that landscape. And I'm sure that these insights were very, very helpful for all our learners. So I'll do a very quick, fun, rapid fire round with you, and then we can just take 2-3 questions. Sure. So the first one AI tool you personally use almost every single day.
I mean, for me, obviously, because I'm more on the business side and customer interaction side and, building system side, I mean, it's today ChatGPT, because for me, I need the pro version and to brainstorm as much as possible, their thinking model and so on and so forth. So that's hands down like the most used.
And okay, so the next one, build fast or build right? What matters more for you in AI products?
So build fast to learn and use that learning to build right. That's what I think, because there's no way to compromise for one over the other. Both have its own, specifics. So build fast, measure, use that learning to build right. So you can't always build right in the first go. So building fast is also important. So that's what I think.
And one non-technical skill every AI professional must have.
Emotional intelligence. I don't even know if it's a non-technical skill, but if you're not having frameworks to think around it, start figuring out frameworks around it is what I would say. Psychology or those kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so one book, podcast, or any creator, influencer who's shaping how you think about AI.
So I really like listening to Mukesh Bansal's SparkX as a podcast generally that I listen to. Recent times, there was this interesting podcast, series of podcasts under Seed to Scale category as well, so I'm not very sticky to one person. So today, if I'm facing a customer problem, I'll dig what are the best podcasts around that. I will listen to that. So it's not very specific to one person. I keep listening to basis the problem that I'm facing at that point in time. So if I'm facing a product building problem, then I'll figure out who's the best in that and then listen to that. So it's mostly related to a day-to-day, requirement that way.
And last, I think the most interesting one. So if not AI startups and founding companies, so what career would you have picked apart from the tech or the technical company landscape?
So I love dancing. So that probably would have been my alternate career, or economics. These are two things that I really find interesting. Economics/political science, both are very interesting for me.
Great.
This session is a perfect example into what the Coding Ninja 10x Club stands for. Learning that's close to the industry, conversations that spark ambition, and guidance that helps you move with direction. While most people are still collecting information, Coding Ninja learners are already gaining exposure to the people who are building the future and are learning how to build in their own place in it. So the real question is, are you ready to level up? Click the link in the description below to join Coding Ninjas and start your journey into a world of skills, innovation, and real opportunity.